Hi, and welcome to another video in the series of Roman noble families. And today we are taking a look at the family of the Claudii Pulchri. And I have chosen here the headline, "As patricians as you could possibly get, and they knew it." And I think this describes the family pretty well in one sentence. Here is our agenda for today, and at first we will take an overview of the Claudii Pulchri, then we go through the different family branches and generations and their connections with other families. And I will close this presentation by discussing more about Pulcher, Metellus, Scipio and Sempronius, which I think is a very interesting way to look at the Roman history and Roman culture through the family histories and generations. But about Claudii Pulchri first. Overview. They are obviously patrician gens, and they have been at consular level from 249 before Christ, and the family itself originally perhaps came from Regillium era, that is east of Rome, a bit of southeast of Rome. So they weren't kind of the original establishing gentes of the Rome in very deep shadows of the history. But at this moment of time when the Claudii Pulchri came consular level, they already had been established Rome for hundreds of years and obviously were part of the ruling aristocracy there. And they are known for their very distinctive family culture, and which quite interestingly produced some very eccentric individuals for the history books. And here we have overview of the family tree, family line, and as you can see, there are quite a few individuals in this family that we know of historically. There are maybe 20 or so individuals whom we can place there in the family tree. And also they ran quite many consecutive consular generations there. So this is a very notable family also for the success and continued presence at the highest levels of the Roman society. At first we will take a look at these earlier generations of the Claudii Pulchri highlighted here, and what you can see is that they are a remarkable family from many other families that we know of, for that we know actually who was the first Claudius Pulcher and when he was, and how he is related to the other branches of the Claudii. And it all began from the father of the first Claudius Pulcher, and that was called Claudius Caecus, and Caecus means blind, and this is because he got blinded suddenly during his lifetime, and he became known for that. This Caecus was 2 times consul at 307 and 296, so well established there in the early beginnings of the historical era of Rome as we know it. And he is actually the first person in Roman history that we have some reliable historical sources for. And Caecus is known as the builder of the famous Via Appia, that probably everyone knows about Rome, and also Aqua Appia, the first aqueduct of Rome. And these Roman roads and Roman aqueducts probably are one of the most lasting and impressive marks of Roman engineership, and also how they left their mark in the history in many areas, not just in the city of Rome. So being the first aqueduct and the first road builder of Rome in itself is quite remarkable, and also remarkable for its novelty of doing something that no one has done before. Appius Claudius Caecus also made some very important changes for electoral laws, and started a tradition that the censores upkept the list of senators, and thereby greatly increasing the prestige of the office of censor. And he was also known as active as a writer and one of the first prose writers of Rome. In his own time, he was also politically quite controversial figure who made bold reforms in many areas and drove forward some policies that were utterly unpopular with the ruling aristocracy, but maybe more popular within the general populace of Rome. And he changed the Roman way of ruling and the city of Rome itself, and the censorship and so on. So he was very much this kind of reformist figure, despite being, I think, in modern terms, we could call him conservative in politics. This Caecus had 4 sons, 3 of whom reached consulship, which is very excellent track record for any Roman family. And central one of these sons was Publius Claudius Pulcher, and this was to be the first Pulcher in history. And he became consul at 249. This consul of 249, his career and life is very much formed by the First Punic War. And when he assumed his consulship, the First Punic War had already lasted 14 years at this stage. And it was a long war already at this moment. And what had happened before his consulship and assuming the command of the Roman armies against Carthage was that during the past few years, the Carthaginians had tried to recapture the island of Sicily and back from the Romans. And they had brought also the feared elephants with them, so it was pretty serious attempt of reconquering the Sicily from the Romans. At the year 250, however, the battles had reached into the city of Panormus, that is city of Palermo now in Sicily, and Romans were under the command of proconsul Lucius Caecilius Metellus, and Romans were successful in defending Panormus, and the battle that ensued was a dramatic shift in the power balance there in the island. And Romans ended up killing even the most of the elephants of the Carthaginians as a result of this defense battle. And for Romans, this was the turning point of the war, and they wanted to take a full advantage of this turn. And they wanted to go offensive in the next year. And so for the year 249, the consuls would have the offensive commands from the Senate to recapture the whole island of Sicily from Carthaginians. Consuls were this Publius Claudius Pulcher, and his colleague was Lucius Junius Pullius. And they had a new army and also a very bold plan of attack. The main target of the Roman attack in this year was the Lilybaeum, that is Marsala, nowadays in Sicily. And this was the last major military base of the Carthaginians at the island. So it was a very important target, because if the Romans could get it, they would practically rule the whole island. And after the Sicily would be safely in the Roman hands, the war could be transferred to the African continent. That was the heartlands of the Carthage. So this was a very important turning point and very bold plan to really to shift the tide of the war into another direction. And this part of this plan was also a naval operation. And the main naval base of the Carthaginian navy at Sicily was at Drepana, that is nowadays Trapani, that is at the most western tip of Sicily. And Roman victory there against the Carthaginian navy would make the position of the Carthaginian land troops much more difficult at the island. And for the Romans, it would mean the safe passage of the Roman navy at the area. And of course, Rome was not even known to have a navy before the Punic Wars. So navy and naval combats was something new for Romans, although Rome had achieved a series of very important naval victories between 257 and 255. And these victories really have ended the active naval war phase of the war. And both sides had been quite passive with the use of navy since then. But now the Romans had built new navy, about 200 ships, which was quite large of the time, and Romans were eager to use it. And it was ordered by the Senate that Consul Publius Claudius Pulcher would lead the naval attack part, while his colleague would take care of the land operations at the same time. So they wanted to kind of make this pincer movement where other consul would approach from the land and other consul would take care of the naval unit of the Carthaginians. And the plan was that they would sail on a moonless night, in the darkness of the night, and quickly take the port of Drepana and destroy the Carthaginian navy there by surprise attack. For this attack plan, Romans deployed well over 100 ships, and that was the majority of their new navy. It might have been even as high as 150 ships. So they really kept only a small reserve fleet added to this attack fleet. And the plan was put into action, and the navy sailed in the darkness of the night alongside the northern coast of the Sicily. And they reached, as planned, the waters of Drepana at dawn. Roman tradition is that at dawn before the battle, the consul needs to perform a religious ceremony in order to make sure that the gods were favoring the battle. So Romans were asking for favorable omens from the gods that please can we go now into this battle and win it. And in this case, the favorable omen would be that the sacred chickens would eat the food that was offered to them. But what happened was that the chickens didn't eat. They didn't want to eat. And Consul Pulcher got very angry and threw the chickens overboard of the ship and exclaimed that, well, if they don't want to eat, perhaps they would like to drink. And then he ordered his naval forces to attack. The Roman navy was a new one, as mentioned, and it has not been fully trained yet. And it was quite demanding operation to sail in the darkness of the night quickly and then move into attack positions right in the beginning of the morning. And it also proved to be a too demanding task for the Roman navy. And Roman lines of the battle were not ready, and the ships were still moving into their positions when the battle began. The Carthaginians were truly surprised, and they had not been expecting an attack from the sea, and they hadn't been taking a guard, for example, of the northern coast of the Sicily to spot possible approaching navies. Carthaginian navy was a traditional navy, and they had been ruling the seas already long before the Roman had any navy at all. And despite being surprised here, and they also had somewhat less, smaller numbers of ships in their use than Romans, then still the Carthaginian crews were experienced and managed to get their ships manned and taken out from the port remarkably quickly. And the battle began in this chaotic manner where Carthaginian ships were making the outbreak from the port into the open sea, and Romans tried to get their battle lines ready and destroy the Carthaginian fleet before they could really group into battle formation. The Roman lines were not ready, and the Carthaginian ships managed to slip past them into the open sea. And this gave really the advantage in the battle for the Carthaginians, because their ships in general were lighter and faster and easier to maneuver into position, and they were manned by more experienced crews as well. And this forced the Roman ships between the coastline and the Carthaginian battle line, which limited the room of movement of Romans very seriously. The battle, however, was very fierce one, and it lasted the whole day. At the end of the day, Romans decided to make an outbreak with their last remaining 30 or so ships. And this battle was to be the largest naval victory of Carthage in the First Punic War. 93 of the Roman ships were captured, and an unknown number was sunk. And Romans lost about 20,000 men in this battle. So it was a major defeat for Romans, and one that really took away most of their new fleet altogether. And Carthaginians took advantage of this battle and its results, and this naval battle was followed by a series of smaller naval battles around the Mediterranean, in which the Carthage destroyed nearly all of the remaining Roman ships. And after this, Romans didn't try to establish a new navy. So it was a very dramatic change in the warfare, and the whole war actually changed in its nature. Rome couldn't anymore make an invasion to Africa, and Carthage was not strong enough to force Rome to surrender at land. So what happened was that the war turned into the war of attrition between Carthage and Rome. And it already had lasted 15 years, and it was to take 8 more years of fighting before Romans emerged as a victor. And it was a very costly victory for Rome. What happened to Publius Claudius Pulcher, consul in command of this navy, was also quite interesting, because engaging this battle that was with two inexperienced troops for ambitious plan like this, that was not the largest crime of the Pulcher, and actually it was not a crime at all. Pulcher was tried in a court, but it was for sacrilege, because he had thrown those chickens overboard. And that was his crime, not losing the navy and 20,000 men. Pulcher was sentenced to exile, where he soon died, and it has said that he probably committed a suicide there. So it was a tragic end for his career as well. But this Claudius Pulcher wasn't the only member of his family to be tried in the court during these years. His sister Claudia actually became the first Roman woman in history to have been tried in a court for crime against the state. And what happened was that there was this event after the defeat of his brother that happened in the streets of Rome. And Claudia had been carried in her litter along the streets of Rome. She was going somewhere. And the streets were busy and bustling with all kinds of people and merchants and people taking care of their businesses. And when the entourage of the Claudia had to stop because the crowd was blocking the street, Claudia reportedly exclaimed that she wished her brother would have drowned some more plebs to make the streets more passable. And well, this was obviously a very tactless thing to say to begin with, and especially ill-considered after the defeat of her brother and the Roman army there. And the relevance here was that most of the rowers of the navy were from the poorer classes, exactly these kind of classes that would populate the city streets in busy market days, for example. So while Claudia was frustrated of a slow journey through the city in a litter, she made this claim that was considered very much as a crime even against the state. And Claudia found herself from the court. And the crowd overall wasn't ready to hear such arrogant speak from a member of the privileged class. And maybe Claudia here kind of misinterpreted the spirit of the times as well, because the First Punic War had put Rome under so much strain that there really was this kind of questions about the cohesion of the Romans, and also the justification for the ruling class to rule under the circumstances where the military side of the war didn't go too well. Were they really justified to be commanders anymore if they couldn't really win this war? And overall, if we take a kind of broader picture of this pair of brother and sister, we can think, for example, the Claudius here. Probably, I think, this is my theory, is that there was some kind of more experienced sub-commander or subordinate of Consul Claudius, who actually had made sure that the chickens wouldn't eat right in the morning. And why I think this is that in the Roman terms, it was, for example, perfectly allowed to keep the chickens in hunger before taking the auspices, before feeding them and seeing if they accept to eat. In Roman mind, it wouldn't be counted as anyhow as trying to cheat or anything like that, because if the chickens would eat, that would be the God's will, regardless if they were fed or not. So keeping them in hunger wasn't really a crime at all. And this is the Roman way of thinking of things. And I think somebody had made sure that the chickens wouldn't eat, and that somebody had realized that the navy wouldn't be ready for the battle right at the dawn, but would need some time to get its lines into arrangement, and then only after that face the enemy fleet, if at all. But of course we don't know this for sure, it's just my theory. Also, I think what we can think about Claudia is that what she said was clearly a private joke of very poor taste. But it was said in a time and in a place that really was the wrong choice. And this brother and sister and all of the family of the Claudii Pulchri became the symbols of arrogance and were made controversial figures. Of course, when we think about their father, Caecus, his reputation was also of arrogance and controversial decisions and making innovations. So here we already can see in this first generation of the Claudii Pulchri this kind of family tradition that was born of Claudii Pulchri being very original in their ways of seeing and doing things. Brothers of the consul of 249 are also pretty interesting ones. Appius Claudius Russus, who was consul in 268, was a colleague of Publius Sempronius Sophus, and they established, for example, the colonies of Ariminum and Beneventum in Italy, and he died during his consular year. Gaius Claudius Gentho was consul in 240, and we don't know much about his life and consulship, but what we do know is that he was appointed as dictator to oversee the election by Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus in 213. So these both brothers of the consul of 249 were aligned somehow in politics with Sempronii, Sempronius Sophus and Sempronius Gracchus. And this is something that would last right in to the end of the Claudii Pulchri, their cooperation with Sempronii. Tiberius Claudius Nero, the fourth son of Appius Claudius Caecus, didn't reach consulship, but he became the grandfather of the consul 202, and he was the starting point of another Claudii branch that was quite long-lived and reached the consular status as well. I think this is pretty interesting group of brothers, these sons of the Caecus, and very telling beginnings for the Appii Claudii as well. Then we have Claudius Pulcher, consul of 212, and he was the son of the first Claudius Pulcher, the consul of 249. We don't know about his mother at all. And from the sons of this consul of 212, 3 also reached consulship. So he continued very much the family tradition and kept up the position in the society. As we remember, the sons of 3 of the sons of his grandfather also reached consulship. This consul of 212 was at the ill-fated battle at Cannae, being one of the survivors, and he got together with Cornelius Scipio Africanus a command in Hispania for 215 to 212. And when he came back from Hispania, he was elected as consul for 212, and then he took part to the siege of Capua and continued there as proconsul after his consular period. And he was wounded here in a battle against Hannibal and died soon after. This consul of 212 also had a sister, Claudia, and who was the daughter of the first Claudius Pulcher then. Claudia was married to Pacuvius Calavius, who was a local nobleman from Capua. And interestingly, their daughter Pacuvia Calavia was married with Marcus Livius Salinator, who was 2 times consul from the years 219 and 207, and thus very notable member of the Roman high society. And their son Gaius Livius Salinator became consul at 188. What's interesting here in this marriage of Claudia is that I think we can see here a glimpse of the importance of the women for the family, and how also the women carried the family name and family prestige forward. Because it was her name that really carried her daughter into the high marriage with Marcus Livius Salinator. Daughter of Pacuvius Calavius from Capua wouldn't have probably had any chance to marry a high noble figure like Salinator, because he was just a local nobility outside Rome, whereas Claudia was part of the Roman nobility. And I think also we can speculate that perhaps her marriage was reason why her brother during his consulship was sent to fight in Capua, especially because the family already had connections in that city and area. So I think if we want to examine further the importance of the women of the family for the overall family and even overall Roman history, I think this is the kind of things we should be look out for as this Claudia and her marriage. And as a summary of these early Claudii Pulchri, their lives, of course, were shaped and influenced a lot by the First Punic War and the Second Punic War. And of course, this is true for all of the leading families of this time. Consular responsibility of leading the war was always present. So if you were elected consul during a wartime, that war would be very much affecting your fate and your legacy. The Claudii family branches from these sons of Appius Claudius Caecus grew big and influential in the Roman society. And I think what we can already see is that the early members of the Claudii Pulchri found their own family culture and kept shaping it as they went. And the hallmarks of later generations like innovation, risk-taking and arrogance, they are all present here already, and we will see here next in the next generations how these same family traits repeat over and over again in the next generations. And moving on from the earliest generations of the Claudii Pulchri, we come into the middle generations of them. And here we start at the consul of 177, Gaius Claudius Pulcher. And he was the most successful of the sons of the consul of 212. He also became censor and triumphator. During his consulship and his censorship, he was working closely in cooperation with Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus. And this was really one of the highlights of the family cooperation between Claudii Pulchri and Sempronii Gracchi. This pair of censors was known to be harsh, and they were sued into court together. It was the popularity of Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus that really saved them both from being sentenced. So Gaius Claudius Pulcher had the good luck of being friends of Sempronius Gracchus here. His daughter Claudia married with Publius Licinius Crassus Dives Mucianus, the consul of 131. Brothers of this consul of 177 were also achieving the consulship. Appius Claudius Pulcher was consul at 185, and he was the eldest one of these brothers. He served in several military assignments, and during his consulship he made sure that his brother followed him as a consul. And so Publius Claudius Pulcher was consul at 184. And after his consulship, he took part in the founding of the city of Graviscae in Etruria, that is Tarquinia, Italy nowadays. Sadly enough, we don't know anything about the wives and possible children of these brothers of the consul of 177. Son of consul of 177 was Appius Claudius Pulcher, and he became consul at 143, and he also continued the family alliance with the Sempronii Gracchi. What can be said about him? He was a very ambitious person, and for example, he started a war in Gallia to get a triumph for himself. And when after the war the Senate did not grant him the triumph, he arranged it himself anyway. And this tells both about the importance of the triumph for the Romans, but also a lot about the character of this Appius Claudius Pulcher. His consulship otherwise was also characterized by the tense relationship with his colleague Quintus Caecilius Metellus Macedonicus, who got the very good military command for himself, and won actually Macedonicus his second triumph during that. Despite the controversial character and being very unscrupulous in his ways of politics, this consul of 143 is actually the only Claudius Pulcher who achieved a censorship triumph and was princeps senatus. And the combination of these honors is really rare in Roman culture. There was only about 10 individuals in the whole history of Rome who shared these positions with him. This consul of 143 married twice, and both of his wives actually were from relatively minor importance families for some reason. With Antistia, he had 3 daughters and 1 son. The son died as an infant. One of the daughters was a Vestal Virgin, and she was famous for being the only Vestal in the Roman history to take part of the triumphal procession with her father. And the other daughters were married to Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, the famous tribune, and the other was married with Quintus Marcius Philippus. With Fonteia, this consul of 143, had 2 sons, and both of which them were elected as consul at 92 and 79. So his family strategy was pretty much flawless in the success that it generated. His daughters married highly and well-placed marriages, and both of his surviving sons became consuls. So it was a kind of model achievement for this Claudius Pulcher. He also had a sister, Claudia, as mentioned, who married with Publius Licinius Crassus Mucianus, consul of 131. And actually it was this marriage of his sister that seemed to have opened the doors for the marriages of the future generations with Caecili Metelli, who were not politically, naturally close to Claudii Pulchri at all. And this is quite interesting view, I think, into changing nature of family alliances and alignments. We also remember that this Mucianus was originally from the Mucius-Scevolae family. He was adopted into Licinigrasse. And Mucius-Scevolae were, in fact, in sympathy with Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus's policies about Rome. So it was kind of also linked into that direction. And what's interesting is that this Mucianus was consul in 131, and at 130 there was consul Gaius Claudius Pulcher. And he was elected when the original consul of the year, Lucius Cornelius Lentulus, had died. So he was consul suffectus. What is unfortunate is that we don't know practically anything about this Gaius Claudius Pulcher. What we do know is that the Claudii Pulchri had a tradition of naming the eldest son as Appius, then followed by Publius, and then Gaius for second and third sons. And this would make it natural for this Gaius Claudius Pulcher to be a younger brother of the consul of 143, Appius Claudius Pulcher. But of course, there is no reason why he couldn't also be a cousin of him. For example, son of a consul of 185 or 184. But it is clear that he was somehow closely related to the consul of 143, even also witnessed here by those marriage alliances. Then we will move forward with this middle group of middle generations of the Claudii Pulchri and take a look at the consul of 79, Appius Claudius Pulcher. And he was known as being a close ally of dictator Sulla. But what's interesting in him is that he didn't want to take part in the robbing of the property of the victims of the Sullan proscriptions. He wanted nothing to do with, he wouldn't enrich himself through that kind of activities. With somewhat ironical result is that this led him to be poorer than many of his fellow senators. And what poor means here in this context, of course we should understand this in context of being less wealthy than many of his peers, but in no way poor compared, for example, to lower classes who really were poor. So this is we have to understand what poor means here. This consul of 79 married Caecilia Metella, daughter of Quintus Caecilius Metellus Palearicus, and their daughter in turn married the nephew of Caecilia, that is Quintus Caecilius Metellus Celer, and their other daughter married with Lucius Licinius Lucullus, whose mother also was Caecilia. So it seems all in all that these generations of the Claudii Pulchri really wanted to form tight alliance with the Metelli through marriages. And as we remember, the consuls of 143, Caecilius Metellus and Claudius Pulcher, were actually political rivals of each other, and it was only their following generations that decided to combine their forces and family resources in this way. And I think when we are looking at marriage deals like this that tie two families so closely together over many generations and family lines, then it's no longer a coincidence or without any further purpose. I think this clearly indicates that these two families wanted to work closely together in all possible ways, because otherwise forming this kind of tight and also costly alliance in the terms of that you align like this, you cannot align with other families in the same way. So it was a costly and important decision to take, which would have been made with all seriousness in Roman circles. Oldest son of Pulcher and Caecilia was elected consul at 54. So it was also a very successful family line move in this sense. Consul of 92, Gaius Claudius Pulcher, was a brother of consul of 79. And Gaius Pulcher is remembered for being specialized in law and administration. For example, he drew up the laws for the city of Alesa in the northern coast of the city, Sicily. And also Mamertines made him as their protector. So he was very much respected as a lawyer and professional in city administration. He is also remembered being the first person who brought elephants to the city of Rome in a festival. This consul of 92 was married with Servilia, who was the granddaughter of the consul of 141, Gnaeus Servilius Caepio. And son of this Pulcher and Servilia was adopted by Marcus Livius Drusus and Servilia. And this Servilia was the cousin of Servilia, who was the mother of this adopted Pulcher. And this adopted son was to be known as Marcus Livius Drusus Claudianus. The daughter of this Claudianus and Alfida was known as Livia Drusilla, and she married Octavianus and became the mother of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. So this is very much a connection of that Claudian part of the Julio-Claudian imperial dynasty that was born. And it was the offspring of this consul of 92 that made it happen. Then let's look at the final generation here in our Republican era focused series of the Claudii Pulchri and Anatonople families. Consul of 54 was Appius Claudius Pulcher, and he was also elected as the censor, so he was very successful in his career. Ironically, his father died without making himself rich in the Sullan proscriptions. And while this was ethically commendable, it also posed the family with problem what would happen when he would die. And this young Appius, he was only 20 years old when his father died, and he found himself with the dilemma of not being able to pay dowry for his sister. And as we know that this was a real problem for Roman. Sulla's most trusted general, Lucius Licinius Lucullus, came to help here, and as remember that the father of this consul of 54 had been also staunch Sullan and reliable ally. And Lucullus promised to marry his sister without dowry. So this solved the problem. And as thanks, Appius begins to help Lucullus in Rome. Lucullus is on commands outside Rome. And for example, this Claudius Pulcher defends Aulus Terentius Varro, who was the comrade in arms and friend of Lucullus in a court case. And it turns out that this young Appius Pulcher is a skilled speaker and skilled lawyer. As we remember, there is a lawyer strain in the family also before. Eventually, young Appius Claudius Pulcher joins Lucullus at the war in the east at year 72. And Lucullus quickly founds a special mission for this Appius Pulcher and sends him as an envoy to the court of King of Armenia, Tigranes. And this Tigranes has given himself the title as a King of Kings. And at the court of Armenia there is a tradition of very Eastern court etiquette that is very different from the Roman Republican etiquette of Senate, for example. And Claudius Pulcher is, of course, Claudius Pulcher, and presents his diplomatic mission and case with such bluntness that the negotiations end quickly. And a couple of years later, Lucullus makes a decision and attacks Armenia. And we know that Lucullus had in his entourage also people familiar with the Armenian court and etiquette. And it has been speculated by historians that did Lucullus send Pulcher there in purpose, trusting that Pulcher will be his proud self and manage somehow to fumble up the negotiations. Or maybe this was already agreed in beforehand between Lucullus and Pulcher, that Pulcher will make sure that the negotiations fail, that there wouldn't be peace between Rome and Armenia, giving Lucullus an excuse later on to declare war and attack Armenia. We don't know. But be that as it may, when Lucullus died, eventually, he left in his testament enough money for Pulcher so that Pulcher didn't have to worry about any money issues ever again. Maybe that is the answer here. When he returned from the east, Pulcher was selected into Collegium Augurum. And again, he showed that he is a true Claudius Pulcher. Because he didn't, satisfy to be just a simple, normal augur like anybody else. Instead, he devoted himself to the arts of the augury very seriously, and he also became respected for his knowledge, and he was also being specialized in very esoteric, little-known branch of augury craft. So he insisted doing it in his own way. He wasn't anyhow this kind of mediocre, normal augur. He was appointed as proconsul of Cilicia after his consulship for the years of 53 to 51. And his younger brother was propraetor of province of Asia at the same time. And this means that these two brothers actually ruled the eastern Mediterranean by themselves during those years. And this was pretty exceptional for the Romans, because usually Romans didn't want to have close relatives in charge of a large area like this, unless in special cases. And we can only speculate how this one got through, but it did. When we think about Roman provincial administration and the system, I think it was the great misluck of any provincial citizens that Roman system was like a lottery between good and bad governors for the provinces. The predecessor of Pulcher in the province was Publius Cornelius Lentulus Pinter, who was considered to be honest and skilled administrator. The successor of Pulcher was Cicero himself, who is considered to be one of the best Roman governors of all time, being just and respectful for the laws and not robbing the province for himself overtly and so on. But the term of Pulcher was very different from these. And his term is known as utterly corrupted, very harsh administration and chaotic period in the history of the province. And this is also a bit strange because earlier he was governor in Sardinia and apparently did a quite good work there. So he wasn't overtly bad there, but in Cilicia he was one of the worst governors. And also interestingly, for the character of this Claudius Pulcher was that when he was returning to Rome from the province of Cilicia, he visited in Athens and he was initiated into Eleusinian mysteries. And he also started a restoration of the temple area of Eleusis. And these restorations were carried through with the provisions from his testament. So he took his religious duties and religious interests very seriously and got very deep when he was getting involved with either augury or in this mystery religion. And furthermore, when he was elected as censor, he was widely accused of bribery in elections, but he was never officially charged for it, so he got away with that. So, this Consul of 54 was very complex and many-sided character, I think. On one hand, he was a very skilled lawyer, and he was interested in the fine details of religion and took it very seriously to train himself properly for religious duties. On the other hand, he was utterly unscrupulous and reckless abuser of his province. And on the other hand, again, he was loyal to his friends, but very eccentric and brutal in his ambitions. And I think this kind of summarizes the audacity of typical Claudian family member. And he was very much like many of his ancestors that were controversial and eccentric figures in Roman history. Then we come perhaps the most famous Claudius Pulcher of all times for us modern people, Clodius. And he refused to use the proper form of his family name and instead opted, as he called it, a plebeian version of the name Clodius. So Claudius becomes Clodius in plebeian version. And I think it's quite befitting for the most famous Claudius Pulcher to deny being a Claudius Pulcher at all. And this also actually reveals very interesting insight to the contested relationships between society, family, and individual identity of Romans. The father of Clodius was the Consul of 79, Claudius Pulcher, and his mother was Caecilia Metella. And thus he was a combination of the two highest Roman families and had 6 direct generations of consuls from both mother and father side before him. So we can also expect that he received a very high quality education because we know that at least his sisters did just that. And Clodius obviously is one of the most controversial figures in the whole Roman history, and it's very difficult to form an objective opinion about him and his life. And he was very active in politics. It is perhaps a bit difficult to see any coherent ideology in modern sense in his political views, especially because there were so many twists and turns in the public career of his. On the other hand, this was also very much how the times themselves were in the Roman politics. The late Republican politics on the years before Civil War were very turbulent and fast-paced politics, even by the Roman standards. So it's not necessarily any wonder why Clodius's politics seem incoherent. because the whole system was unstable at those years. In some measures, we can argue that Claudius's policies helped the poor people of Rome. He, for example, changed the price subvented grain distribution of the Gracchi brothers to be fully free for poor people. But on the other hand, Claudius fully employed gangs and other forms of physical violence in politics, while the Gracchi had been against using violence. So it's not a straight cut thing here at all. And I think it seems more convincing to say that while the Gracchi wanted to help the poor, Claudius wanted to make the poor to be in debt of gratitude for him and use these poor people to help himself in politics. But this, of course, is also a bit colored version of events and motivations. And I would say that in all, it is pretty complicated matter. What's interesting is that Claudius showed quite remarkable ingenuity in finding new ways to mobilize to support for himself in the politics. He, for example, managed to mobilize the city district administration to be his political vehicle in a way that nobody had done it before. And actually, in this sense, he is pretty similar to many of his relatives and ancestors. He was reinterpreting and rearranging Rome's social and political structures to his liking and for his ambitions, be they what they ever may be. Claudius was murdered at year 52, and the years before this were very much dominated by the power struggles that revolved around Caesar, Pompeius, and Crassus. And Claudius used both the Senate and the members of the Triumvirate in turns to help him gain his objectives in politics. And for example, also the Senate found the unpredictable and even strange political acts of Claudius to be a useful tool in fight against the Triumvirate. And vice versa, for example, Caesar was using Claudius as his help occasionally. And if we are honest, I think this is a logical tactic for Claudius, because if he wanted to stay independent from both sides of that struggle and advance his own career, then this is quite a logical thing to do. But also, I think we must keep in mind that there is a very fine line between being independent and cynical opportunist. And I think it's quite impossible to really make a difference between Claudius between these things. That was he just wanting to be independent, or was he just cynically using the power struggle between others as a vehicle for his own advancement? Claudius is also remembered from the Ponadea scandal, and this is obviously one of the most known scandals of Roman history. Ponadea was one of these very popular mystery religions of the time, and Ponadea means a good goddess, meaning the beneficial one for the humans. The real name of the goddess was revealed only to those who took part to the rites of Ponadea, and true to this, we do not know anymore which goddess it was. There has been quite a lot of speculation about which it was, but for example, it could have been Demeter. But we don't know. The cult of Ponadea was only open for women, and it had 2 annual gatherings in which the women worshippers met. One was at the beginning of the May at Aventine Hill, that was the plebeian city part, and the other was at December at home of the wife of consul or similarly placed high official. The Vestals and especially appointed sacerdotes of Ponadea were responsible for practical arrangements of these. And these worshipping events, gatherings, the place where they were held was decorated with flowers, and the cult statue of the goddess was brought to the banquet hall and placed at the seat of honor. So it was very much in the sense of that the divinity herself was present at the banquet. And what happened was that there was a ceremony where internals of a calf and wine was sacrificed for the goddess. And after this, the banquet for the goddess started and lasted the whole night. There were female musicians and dancers, and wine and different sort of games played during the night. And this was strictly only for women. And if a man was caught watching these rites, the punishment was blinding him. So he would be blind after that. And if a man was present at the event, the punishment was death. So it was very strictly prohibited of any kind of man being even at the eyesight of the banquet. December of 62, the rites of Bonadea were arranged at the house of Pontifex Maximus Gaius Julius Caesar, and obviously the event was hosted by his wife Pompeia. During the festivities, one of the slaves of Aurelia, that was mother of Caesar, noticed something strange in one of the guests. The guest wasn't a woman, it was Clodius, dressed as a woman. And this obviously was a major scandal. The rite had to be done again by the Vestals to correct this mistake, as was the Roman custom. If you made a mistake during the religious rite, you have to start all over again from the beginning to make it correct. And trial was arranged for this most clear case really for demanding a death penalty. So Clodius really had his life on stake here. After a prolonged trial of 2 years and a massive corruption campaign, Clodius was acquitted. He wasn't sentenced to death. And this controversy of this trial really affected the religious authorities of Rome for decades after this one. So it was a major event and scandal in the Republican Rome. Caesar divorced his wife. As a result, he said that the wife of Caesar must be above all suspicions. Maybe this was also a bit of excuse for Caesar, but we don't know. As the crime happened in the official residence of Pontifex Maximus, it was also a matter of state as well as religion, because it was the state-owned apartment, one of the very few state-owned apartments in Rome. So it was a complicated trial, which also included the state, the religion, and very prestigious individuals from high families. And the question here is that what on earth made Clodius to do this? Why was he there? And it was rumored at the time that he had or wanted to have an affair with Caesar's wife Pompeia. And I think that one is inclined to think that there would have been much less risky ways of these alleged lovers to meet if they wanted to. On the other hand, this could have been Aurelia's way to punish Cornelia, and I don't know. This is very different questions and difficult questions to understand. But overall, if Aurelia wanted to punish Pompeia, it's difficult to imagine any more humiliating thing to do than this. It was very public and very humiliating. The scandal became an obvious way to shake the authority of the Pontifex Maximus Caesar. This is obvious because Pontifex Maximus was formally responsible the activities of the Vestals, who were responsible for the rite. So, and it was also happening in his very home. And Caesar had been elected only a year before this to the office, and that was after a massive bribing campaign to win the election. And I think that the logic here is that if this kind of scandal could happen during the Caesar's term as Pontifex Maximus and even in his home, was he really capable of handling the office of the high priest? Uh, I think this is a very logical view to take, but it's not clear how such a plot could have been made in advance. So maybe this was just a likely a reaction of the Caesar adversaries to the events, not a plot in itself. What could have been the Clodius's motivation? He was 29 years old, and sometimes it is suggested that this was just, folly of the youth and an adventure of immature young person. But really, 29 years old doing this kind of thing, I don't quite buy that. He wasn't a teenager anymore. But when it comes to Clodius, I think he did have some real motivation there, and not just he was not just joking around or having fun without realizing the consequences. For example, I think he had a goal and he had a motivation and he had a reason for this, even though that reason remains clouded for us. Overall, when we consider the life and deeds of Clodius, I think we can see the common spirit of the Claudii Pulchri very clearly. He was ambitious and ingenious. He was arrogant, and he did things of motivations of which seem understandable only for himself and not to the others. He was very much this kind of eccentric individual. One last curiosity of his life and career and politics, and also it is intra-family curiosity, is that his ancestor Appius Claudius Caecus had given the censors the power to select senators, but Clodius advocated a change for that law that would have restricted the power of censores to remove the senators from the Senate. So he was actually also making changes to the family tradition as well there, or wanted to make that didn't pass really. Clodius also had a sister, the infamous Clodia, and as if the world would need any more controversial Claudii at this moment. But there was this Clodia, and she was the daughter of the consul 79 and Caecilia as well. What we know about her is that she was fluent in both in Latin and Greek, so she was very educated, and she knew philosophy well and also was a gifted poetess. So we are not talking about here some idle rich person who doesn't have any talents or any alternatives in life. She was well educated and she was skilled in these crafts. She was married with the cousin of Quintus Caecilius Metellus Celer from the mother's side. The family cultures of Caecili Metelli and Claudii Pulchri were different, that's for sure. But on the other hand, Clodia was free to choose which culture she felt closer to, as her mother was also Caecilia. But even if we might think that it would make the marriage between her and Metellus Celer easy, that wasn't the case. The marriage wasn't easy at all. This pair was known for public arguments and also the many affairs of Clodia with other men. And having affairs in itself wasn't scandalous, but them becoming public knowledge was scandal. And I think in the world of the arranged marriages, this makes sense, quite a lot of sense, because you can't force love between the spouses, and you have to make arrangements to for example, if there was a great age difference and so on. But the thing is that you weren't supposed to make these affairs public, and Clodia apparently didn't do much to keep her relationships as secret, which was really the scandal here. And what happened was that in 59 her husband Celer died in rather unclear circumstances, and it was widely suspected that Clodia had poisoned him. And after death of Celer, Clodia had many lovers, among whom was also Marcus Caelius Rufus. And interestingly, this Rufus was accused of poisoning of a diplomat, and which caused a famous trial to be arranged. The prosecutor of Rufus was one Atranius, and it was rumored that Clodia was lover of this Atranius and was manipulating him to declare Caelius Rufus as guilty and to be sentenced to death. And Caelius Rufus was obviously her previous lover. Clodia also publicly accused Rufus having been trying to poison her. Very complicated affair then. Cicero was defending Rufus. It was suspected that the trial gave Cicero an excuse to attack against Clodius, and Clodius was the most bitter enemy of Cicero, and through Clodius' sister. And Clodius, for example, was responsible of driving Cicero into exile, and they otherwise as well had very contested relations. On the other hand, it was said that Cicero's wife Terentia was suspecting Cicero of having an affair with Clodia herself. So what was Cicero's motivation there then? Cicero famously accused Clodius and Clodia of incestual relationship and called Clodia a drunkard, and with some other insults that do really justice Cicero's skill as a speaker, but perhaps don't do as much justice to the character of Clodia, so I won't repeat them here. But you can read it, it's a quite juicy story. If it was difficult for the contemporaries to find out the truth in such a scandalous environment, it is utterly impossible for us. How could you find any certainty of which of those allegations, if any, was true, and to which extent? It seems certain that Clodia was uncommonly open-minded individual who didn't care about conventions. I think that is fair to say. On the other hand, there hasn't survived information that would actually contradict the accusations hurled against her. We don't know. But there is as little also survived information that would prove any of the accusations actually to be true ones. So no certainty there. We simply do not know the truth. Roman court speakers in these trials, they were masters of character assassination, and they used very colorful language and built very nasty cases against individuals. And in Clodia's case, these really were unhinged to the maximum. Overall, when we consider the family of the Claudii Pulchri, what is proved in these trials and these incidents about her life is that Clodia was every bit as controversial figure as were many other of the Claudii Pulchri family members. That was the case of Clodia and Clodius. Let's for the last take this kind of different look into Pulcher, Metellus, Scipio, and Sempronius. And what I mean by this is that when we look here at the family chart of different families, is that we will find here a collection of some very influential individuals of the Republican history of these periods. And really these were the people who were in the center of things and formed the core of the history of Rome. And in this diagram we can observe a sizable portion of the upper class of the Roman society during the last century of the Republic. The families of Claudii Pulchri, Cecli Metelli, Cornelis Scipiones, Sempronii Gracchi, Licini Crassi, and Licini Luculli, as well as Muci Scevole, are all present here in this web of contacts. And this also shows the extent of the family connections and how important and how intertwined the families were between each other. And I think as such this is an excellent diagram to learn more about Roman families and their relations to each other. as well as reflect on differing family strategies. All the families included here had their unique family strategy with highly different outcomes as well. And when it comes to Claudii Pulchri, I think it is in many ways that Claudii Pulchri were uniquely connected with other families. For example, if you look at the consuls of 177 and 143 Claudii Pulchri, they were in many ways at the center points of the Republic. Their colleagues in consulship were Quintus Caecilius Metellus Macedonicus and Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, and through these and continued, they formed and continued close family relations to these somewhat conflicting families. So these consuls of 177 and 143 really were kind of the watershed of the Roman history, and also the watershed in the family history of the Claudii Pulchri and their connections within the Roman high society. And I think in these characters and individuals of the inner circle of the Republic, and there's a very dynamic and interesting combination of real decision makers of the Republic itself, of these families and family lines, and also themselves as individuals. And we can see all these levels kind of interacting here in the decision-making process. And this offers very wonderful starting point for further investigations and into this part of the Roman culture, which I think is also problematical for us modern people to understand and get our minds around to, because so much depended on family relations, and also so much happened at the individual level of consideration. And I think sometimes it has been used as an argument that the marriages aren't that important, and it's not important which family was aligning with another family compared to the individuals making the decisions. But I think this is a flawed perspective, because if you take a consideration of this kind of family cooperation that continues generation after generation in the family lines between families, it is obvious that sometimes you have to make a compromise and make a decision that is not optimal for maintaining this family alignment. But if the family alignment really continues over 3 or 4 generations, then something is keeping it alive. It has more meaning than just one-off marriage between some family or another. When it comes this kind of really institutionalized device for the families to stick together for even over 100 years or 200 years. So I think we should take this kind of family alignments kind of basic unit that individual follows this family alliance if there is something that both parties can win out of it by default, and only if there is no interest with the other family, or the conflict of interest is so great that the other family will also understand and forgive this kind of stepping out from the alliance for a moment and then returning to it after some time. So I think this kind of dynamic and continually negotiating relationship between families through generations is something that we really should take into account when we think about Roman history and Roman culture, and also the Roman individuals, how we understand their motivations and actions. Overall, when we look at the Claudii Pulchri and their marriage connections, it has to be said that despite of lack of information of the early generations, it is still one of the most best-known Republican noble families when it comes to marriage connections. And it has deep connections with Caecilii, Metellii and Sempronii Gracchi, and it's also connected with Licinii, both Licinii Grassi and Licinii Luculli. As family strategy, family culture, it is very distinctive family. And Claudii Pulchri can be said that they are in many ways prototypes of eccentric aristocrats. Each generation of their family line seems to contain true genius and originality that defies norms and expectations. And one wonders if they felt pressure to be original even. And did they really try to be different on purpose from others? They employed marriages, political career alignments, judicial careers, wealth, religious offices, and military exploits. And they employed these with astonishing variety and also astonishing ingenuity of making innovations. I think we should give audacity the central role in their family culture. Many initiatives of these members of this family rely on combination of very original idea and audacity to carry it out or force it through. Ruthlessness and disregard of laws are also often present, but I think they should be understood in this context of changing things and not doing illegal things by purpose. So they wanted to change things, and if it required doing something that was borderline or outright illegal, they were ready to do it in order to force their will through. And Julio-Claudian imperial dynasty, their origins are in the Claudii Pulchri family, and I think in this regard the family strategy was very successful, and it kept the family relevant during the turbulent end of the Republic and beginning of the empire in a way that only really the Julii-Caesare's family could do as well. I think that was all about the Claudii Pulchri. It's a highly interesting family, full of even funny stories about these eccentric individuals, and it's a lively family to read about, and also a very challenging family when you try to understand their motivations and get through all these couple of millennia of judgment by others, and to try to find the kind of original spirit and motivations and ideas of the family members and what they were really after and why they did what they did. So it's a very interesting family, very influential in the history of Rome and history of Republic, and also pretty well known, so it's quite easy to find information about many individuals and their lives, so it's also a kind of rewarding family to make research about, because it's quite a lot easier than many other families. That was all for this, and thank you, and I hope that we will see the next time with some other family.